The first drop of human blood hit our laboratory floor at exactly 1400 hours, Galactic Standard Time. I should have incinerated it immediately. Should have sealed the containment unit, activated the emergency protocols, and reported the contamination to High Command. Instead, I watched it spread. My name is Quick7, Senior Genetic Analyst for the Morvak Imperial Science Division, and I am about to tell you how a single human female named Elena Torres destroyed our entire civilization. Not with weapons, not with some miraculous technology. With her blood, her beautiful, terrifying, impossible blood. But let me back up because you need to understand just how monumentally we screwed this up. The war against humanity had been raging for 3 cycles. 3 long, brutal cycles of what we initially assumed would be a quick conquest. The humans called it the Crimson Offensive, which should have been our first clue that these creatures had a twisted sense of humor about their own destruction. We Morvaks pride ourselves on efficiency. Our empire spans 14 solar systems. We have conquered 47 species. We are methodical, logical, and utterly ruthless. So when our scouts reported a backwater planet populated by a species that had barely mastered interplanetary travel, we expected the usual swift victory, resource extraction, population subjugation. Humans, however, do not follow the usual patterns. The Battle of Proxima Station lasted 6 standard days. By all tactical calculations, it should have lasted 6 hours. Our fleet outnumbered theirs 10 to 1. Our weapons were superior. Our armor was impenetrable. Our strategy was flawless. They won anyway. Commander Vorth Prime returned to our command ship missing 3 limbs and most of his dignity. They do not fight like any species we have encountered, he reported, his voice shaking with something I had never heard from a Morvak warrior before: fear. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They turn their own ships into weapons. They sing while they die. Singing while dying. Who does that? The second engagement at the Meridian asteroid field went even worse. The humans deployed something they called kamikaze tactics. Apparently this was named after some ancient Earth warriors who considered suicide charges a viable military strategy. Their pilots would deliberately crash their small fighters into our massive battlecruisers, causing catastrophic damage despite the size difference. It was insane, it was inefficient, it was tactically brilliant. After losing 2 more fleet groups, High Command made a decision that would doom us all. They wanted to study these creatures, understand what made them so unpredictable, so dangerous, so infuriatingly effective at turning our own strength against us. That is how I ended up in Laboratory Complex Gamma 7, staring at containers filled with human biological samples. Blood, tissue, genetic material, all obtained from captured prisoners of war. All perfectly legal under galactic combat conventions. All completely beyond my understanding. The cellular structure makes no sense. My assistant Nix4 complained for the 10th time that cycle. Look at these readings. Their red blood cells have no nucleus. How do they replicate? How do they repair damage? I leaned over the analysis station, studying the data streams. Nix was right. Human biology violated several fundamental principles of organic chemistry. Their blood cells were essentially empty bags carrying oxygen. Their immune system attacked their own healthy tissue when threatened. Their brain consumed 20% of their total energy despite being only 2% of their body mass. They were evolutionary accidents, walking contradictions, biological impossibilities, and they were winning the war. "Sir," came a voice from the containment section. Tech specialist Grix9 was monitoring the human prisoners. "We have a situation." I moved to the observation deck overlooking the holding cells. Below, 23 human prisoners sat in individual containment units. Standard procedure called for immediate interrogation and termination, but High Command wanted them kept alive for ongoing research. Another mistake. "What is the nature of the situation?" I asked. Grix9 pointed to cell 17. The female designated Elena Torres. Her vital signs are unusual. I looked down at the human in question. Female, approximately 25 Earth years, brown hair, dark eyes. She had been captured during the raid on mining station Beta 7, where she had been serving as some kind of medical officer. Nothing particularly remarkable about her appearance, except for the readings on her biomonitor. Her heart rate is 72 beats per minute, Grix reported. Normal for a resting human, but look at her brain activity. The neural scan showed patterns I had never seen before. Complex wave formations that seemed to pulse in mathematical sequences, not random electrical noise but organized, purposeful, almost like communication patterns. I whispered, "Sir, run a full genetic analysis, Class 7 priority. I want to know everything about this human." As Grix 9 initiated the scan, I continued watching Elena Torres. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead. But those brain patterns continued their complex dance. Whatever was happening inside her skull, it was not normal human neural activity. 3 hours later, the results came back, and everything changed. "Sir," Grix 9's voice cracked. In 3 cycles of working together, I had never heard him lose composure. "You need to see this." The genetic profile of Elena Torres filled my screen. At first glance, it appeared human. Standard carbon-based DNA structure, recognizable protein sequences, familiar chromosomal arrangements. But when I adjusted the analysis parameters to look deeper, by the 7 moons of Korath, I breathed. Her genetic code contained sequences that should not exist. Not in humans, not in any known species. Viral insertions that had somehow integrated perfectly into her cellular structure without causing rejection or mutation. Synthetic proteins that could not have evolved naturally. Quantum entanglement markers that suggested, "This is impossible," Nix 4 said, reading over my shoulder. These genetic modifications would require technology centuries beyond human capability. "Unless they did not modify themselves," I replied, a chill running down my exoskeleton. The implications hit me like a plasma bolt to the chest. If humans had not created these modifications themselves, then someone else had, someone with technology far superior to our own. Someone who had been experimenting with human genetics for purposes we could not yet comprehend. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the dormant sequences embedded in Elena Torres' DNA, genetic triggers that were currently inactive but clearly designed to activate under specific conditions. I ran probability analyses, cross-referenced with known biological warfare agents, and checked against every genetic weapon in our databases. Nothing matched. "Grix," I called. "How many humans do we have in custody?" 23, sir. Run full genetic profiles on all of them. Priority Alpha. I want results within the hour." While we waited, I studied Elena Torres more carefully. She had not moved from her meditation position, had not spoken since her capture, had not shown any signs of distress or fear. Most prisoners, regardless of species, displayed elevated stress indicators when held in containment. Fight or flight responses, attempts to escape or negotiate. She did none of these things. She simply sat and waited, and let her brain generate those impossible neural patterns. The genetic analysis results for the other prisoners arrived with devastating clarity. Every single human in our custody carried similar modifications. Different sequences, different trigger conditions, but the same fundamental alterations to their base genetic structure. Every single one. "Sir," Nix 4 said quietly, "if all humans carry these modifications, then we are not fighting a naturally evolved species," I finished. "We are fighting a biological weapons system." The question was, a weapons system created by whom, and for what purpose? I activated the communication array and opened a channel to High Command. "This is Quix 7, requesting immediate conference with Strategic Command. Priority classification, extinction level event." The response came back within minutes. "Conference approved. What is the nature of the threat?" How do you explain to a room full of military leaders that you may have just discovered evidence of genetic warfare beyond anything in recorded galactic history? How do you tell them that the enemy they have been fighting for 3 cycles might not be the real enemy at all? "Sir," Grix 9 interrupted before I could formulate my response. "The human designated Elena Torres. She is moving." I turned back to the observation window. Elena Torres had stood up. She was walking to the center of her containment cell. Her movements were fluid, purposeful, almost ceremonial. Then she began to speak. Not in Galactic standard, not in any human language in our databases. She spoke in mathematical equations, prime number sequences, quantum probability formulas. Her voice carried harmonics that should not have been possible with human vocal cords, and every other human prisoner began to respond. 23 voices, speaking in perfect mathematical harmony. Complex equations that my translation systems could not parse. Formulas that seemed to bend the laws of physics simply by being spoken aloud. Shut it down, I ordered. Cut the audio feeds. Activate sonic dampeners. But the humans did not stop speaking. The containment units were soundproof, yet somehow their voices continued to harmonize, as if they were communicating through methods that transcended physical barriers. The blood sample from Elena Torres began to glow, not metaphorically. Literally. The crimson liquid in the containment vessel started emitting a soft blue radiance that intensified with each passing second. The other human blood samples followed suit, creating a constellation of glowing points across my laboratory. Sir Drix 9 shouted over alarms that had begun blaring throughout the complex. Massive energy readings from all human biological samples. Whatever they are doing, it is causing fundamental changes at the molecular level. I ran to the primary analysis console. The readings were impossible. The human blood was generating energy outputs that violated the laws of thermodynamics, converting matter directly into quantum field fluctuations, creating localized space-time distortions that our sensors could barely detect. Emergency containment protocols. I ordered, seal all samples, isolate the prisoners, and get me a direct line to the fleet admiral. But even as I spoke, I knew it was too late. Elena Torres smiled. She looked directly up at the observation window, directly at me, with eyes that now glowed the same impossible blue as her blood. When she spoke, her voice somehow reached me despite the sonic dampeners. "Hello, Kick 7, she said in perfect Morvak. "We have been waiting for you to find us." The laboratory exploded into chaos. Every human blood sample simultaneously reached critical energy states. Containment fields failed. Emergency systems activated. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear the distinctive whine of our planetary defense grid powering up. Because something was approaching our world. Something massive. Something that our sensors had not detected until this very moment. Something that had been waiting for Elena Torres to send her signal. As I watched our readings spike beyond comprehension, as I listened to 23 human voices speaking equations that could rewrite reality, as I felt the first tremors of what would soon become the complete annihilation of everything I had ever known, one thought echoed through my mind. We should have incinerated that first drop of blood. We should have incinerated it immediately. Instead, we had tried to solve the puzzle. And in solving it, we had doomed ourselves. Elena Torres stepped through her containment field as if it were made of mist. Her smile widened, and when she spoke again, her words carried the weight of extinction. Phase 1 is complete. Kick 7. Time for Phase 2. The lights went out. Emergency power failed. And in the darkness, I heard something that would haunt my final moments. Elena Torres was laughing. Not with madness. Not with cruelty. With genuine joy. As if watching our civilization prepare to burn was the most wonderful thing she had ever experienced. And somewhere above us, something vast and ancient and impossibly powerful began its descent toward our unsuspecting world. Her blood had been the key. The genetic puzzle we so eagerly solved had been the lock, and in our arrogance, our scientific curiosity, our desperate need to understand our enemy, we had opened the door to our own annihilation. The war against humanity was over. The real war was about to begin. But first, Elena Torres had something to show us about the true nature of human genetic modification. Something that would make our previous defeats look like minor tactical errors. Something that would redefine our understanding of what it meant to be human. Something that would teach us why the rest of the galaxy had learned, long ago, to leave Earth alone. The containment field around the other prisoners flickered and died. 22 more impossible humans stood up, their eyes glowing with that same terrible blue light. They began to change. The first thing you should know about watching humans transform is that they do not scream. Any rational species would scream when your bones start reshaping themselves, when your muscles tear apart and rebuild, when your very DNA rewrites itself in real time. The logical response is screaming, pain, terror, begging for it to stop. Humans laugh. 23 voices filled laboratory complex Gamma 7 with the sound of pure, delighted laughter as their bodies began what I can only describe as controlled evolution. Elena Torres stood at the center of it all, her arms spread wide, her head thrown back in absolute joy as her spine extended, her ribcage expanded, and her skin took on a metallic sheen that reflected the emergency lighting like polished chrome. "Magnificent," she whispered, and her voice now carried harmonics that made my exoskeleton ache. "After so many cycles of pretending to be weak, of hiding what we really are, finally, we can stop acting." "Sir," Rix-9 shouted from the communication station. "Planetary Defense Command is reporting massive energy signatures approaching from the outer system. Estimated time to planetary orbit, 47 minutes. I forced myself to look away from the impossible spectacle of human transformation and focus on the tactical display. What I saw there made my blood freeze in my veins. The approaching signatures were not ships. They were too large to be ships. The smallest registered at 12 kilometers in length. The largest was the size of a small moon, and there were hundreds of them. "Fleet Admiral Zorth Prime on emergency channel," Rix announced. I activated the communication array with trembling digits. "This is Quix 7. What in the name of the void is happening down there?" Sovier's voice crackled with static and barely controlled panic. "Our sensors are detecting energy outputs that should not be possible. And those things approaching our system, what are they?" I glanced back at Elena Torres. Her transformation was nearly complete. What had once been a small human female now stood nearly 3 meters tall, her limbs elongated into elegant killing tools, her eyes burning with that impossible blue fire. Cables of living metal had emerged from her spine, connecting her directly to the laboratory's computer systems. "Sir," I said quietly, "I believe we have been fighting the wrong war." "Explain. How do you explain that your enemy has been deliberately losing battles? That every human captured, every sample taken, every piece of intelligence gathered has been part of an elaborate trap spanning 3 full cycles? The humans we have been fighting," I began. "They are not the real humans." Elena Torres turned toward me, and when she smiled I saw rows of teeth that could shred battleship armor. "Finally," she said, her voice somehow reaching both me and Fleet Admiral Zorth Prime despite the closed communication channel. "Someone begins to understand." "Who is this?" Zorth demanded. "How is she accessing this frequency?" "Allow me to introduce myself properly," Elena replied, and suddenly every screen in the laboratory showed her face. Not just in our complex, but throughout the entire planetary defense network. "I am Elena Torres, commander of the Terran Genetic Warfare Division, and you, Fleet Admiral Zorth Prime, have been wonderfully cooperative test subjects." The screens flickered, and suddenly we were looking at something that defied comprehension. The approaching objects were not ships. They were organisms, living creatures the size of capital ships, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, their surfaces bristling with weapons that looked grown rather than manufactured. "Beautiful, are they not?" Elena continued conversationally. "Bioships, grown from human genetic templates, enhanced with technologies you cannot even imagine. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a continent. We have been building them for 6 centuries. 6 centuries, I whispered. "Oh yes," Quix 7. "You see, when the Galactic Council first contacted Earth 800 years ago, they made a very simple mistake. They assumed humans were a typical developing species, primitive, harmless, suitable for eventual integration into galactic society. The other transformed humans began moving through the laboratory with fluid, predatory grace. They showed no interest in escape. Instead, they started accessing our computer systems, their metallic appendages interfacing directly with our technology. They offered us protection," Elena continued, "membership in their peaceful coalition. All we had to do was abandon our aggressive tendencies and accept their guidance." "And you refused," Zorth said, his voice hollow. We accepted, Elena corrected, and her smile became something from nightmares. We told them we would gladly abandon our warlike nature. We would become peaceful, cooperative, harmless. Understanding hit me like a meteor strike. You have been infiltrating galactic society for 8 centuries. Not infiltrating. Preparing? Do you have any idea how many species carry human genetic markers in their DNA now? How many galactic leaders have human-modified advisors? How many planetary defense networks have been quietly upgraded with human-designed components? The bioships entered our outer system, and our planetary sensors registered energy readings that broke our measurement scales. But that was not the terrifying part. The terrifying part was that our defense grid did not fire. Computer systems compromised, Grix reported, his voice shaking. All weapons platforms showing green status, but they are not responding to firing commands. Of course they are not, Elena laughed. Humans designed the targeting algorithms 3 cycles ago. Did you think it was a coincidence that your weapons became so much more accurate after the Proxima Station engagement? Everything clicked into place with horrible clarity. The human prisoners we had captured, the biological samples we had collected, the intelligence we had gathered. All of it had been deliberately provided. We had not been studying humans. They had been studying us. Phase 2 protocols are now active, Elena announced to the other transformed humans. Begin planetary network integration. The creatures that had once been human prisoners moved with coordinated precision. They interfaced with every computer system in the complex, their living metal appendages spreading like roots through our technology. In seconds, they had complete access to our planetary infrastructure. Sir, a voice called from somewhere in the complex. Emergency blast doors are sealing throughout the facility. Life support systems are switching to manual control. We are being locked in. Not locked in, Elena corrected. Protected. The harvest is about to begin, and we would not want our research subjects to be damaged by stray weapons fire. Harvest? I demanded. Did you think this was about conquest, Kick 7, territory, resources? How quaint! Elena approached me, her movements fluid and hypnotic. This is about evolution, about taking the next step in human development. And for that, we need data. The bioships took position around our planet in a perfect sphere formation. Each vessel pulsed with the same blue energy we had seen in the blood samples. The same energy now flowing through Elena Torres and her companions. You see, she continued, humans discovered something wonderful centuries ago. We learned that consciousness, intelligence, even memory can be encoded into genetic sequences, stored, transmitted, evolved. Horror began to dawn on me. You are going to harvest our neural patterns. Not just patterns. Everything, every thought, every memory, every piece of knowledge your species accumulated over millennia. We will add it to our own genetic library. Your entire civilization will become part of human evolution. Sir, Rix 9 called from the communication station. Bioships are deploying some kind of atmospheric processors, gas clouds spreading across major population centers. On the main display, I watched silver clouds begin to envelope our cities. Where the gas touched living beings, they simply stopped moving. Not dead, not unconscious. Perfectly preserved, their neural activity somehow suspended in time. A gentle paralytic, Elena explained. We learned long ago that fear and pain corrupt the neural harvesting process. Your people will feel nothing as we extract everything they have ever known. Fleet Admiral Zord's voice crackled through the communication array one final time. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Zorth Prime, implement Scorched Sky Protocol. If we cannot win, we ensure nothing of value falls into enemy hands. I felt a chill of pride mixed with despair. Scorched Sky was our ultimate contingency. Every Morvak military vessel would simultaneously detonate their antimatter cores, creating a chain reaction that would sterilize our entire solar system. Elena Torres tilted her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she laughed. How delightfully noble, she said, and how completely useless. On the tactical display, I watched our entire fleet light up as they prepared for synchronized self-destruction. 15 battle cruisers, 47 destroyers, hundreds of support vessels. Enough antimatter to crack a planet. The detonation commands were sent. Nothing happened. You see, Elena said. Conversationally, human genetic modifications are not limited to obvious changes. Some of our enhancements are quite subtle. For instance, the ability to interface directly with any technology that contains even trace amounts of human-designed components. She gestured toward the tactical display, where our fleet hung motionless in space. Your ship's computer cores were upgraded with human-designed quantum processors 6 months ago. A routine efficiency improvement, approved by your own military leadership. Those processors are now under our direct control. The entire fleet, I whispered. The entire galactic military complex. She corrected. Oh, Kix-7, you still do not understand the scope of this operation. We have not been preparing for 3 cycles. We have been preparing for 8 centuries. The bioships began launching smaller vessels toward the surface. Not invasion craft, but collectors. Delicate, precise instruments designed to extract neural patterns from preserved organic matter. How many, I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Species, 47. Including your own? Civilizations? 312. Individual consciousness patterns. Approximately 14 billion. Give or take a few million. I stared at her in horror. You have been doing this across the entire galaxy. Of course. How else do you think humans went from a single planet to the most genetically diverse species in known space? Every civilization we have harvested becomes part of us. Every innovation, every discovery, every unique perspective gets woven into human DNA. The transformed humans had completed their integration with our computer systems. Our entire planetary infrastructure was now under their control. Power grids, communication networks, defense systems, even life support. All of it responding to their genetic commands. But why? I demanded. Why preserve consciousness at all? Why not simply destroy and move on? Elena Torres stepped closer, and I could see my reflection in her metallic skin. Because, dear Kix-7, extinction is waste, and humans do not waste anything. She gestured toward the screens showing the harvest process. Your species has spent millennia developing unique approaches to engineering, philosophy, art. That knowledge has value. Your individual memories, your personal experiences, your emotional responses to crisis, all valuable data. You are turning us into genetic livestock. We are making you immortal, she corrected. Every Morvak consciousness we harvest will live forever as part of human genetic memory. Your species will not die, it will evolve. It will become something greater than it ever could have been alone. The collector ships reached the surface and began their work. I watched on the monitors as silver tendrils emerged from their hulls, connecting to the paralyzed forms of my people. The process looked almost gentle, peaceful. How long? I asked. For complete planetary harvest? Approximately 6 hours. Your population is relatively small and our techniques have become quite efficient over the centuries. 6 hours to reduce an entire civilization to genetic code. 6 hours to transform billions of individuals into data points in some vast human library of consciousness. You know what the most beautiful part is? Elena continued. Within a generation there will be humans walking around carrying Morvak genetic sequences. They will have access to your memories, your knowledge, your unique perspective on the universe. Your species will not just survive, it will spread across 1,000 worlds. As slaves, as components, as valuable, cherished components in something infinitely larger and more complex than your current civilization could ever achieve. I looked around the laboratory at my transformed colleagues. They stood motionless, their metallic forms connected to every system in the complex, waiting, processing. Becoming something that was no longer entirely human and certainly no longer Morvak. What about us? I asked. The research staff. Are we to be harvested as well? Elena Torres smiled, and for a moment I saw something almost like compassion in her burning eyes. Oh, Kix-7. You and your team are special. You solved the puzzle. You figured out the genetic modifications. You displayed the kind of scientific curiosity and analytical capability that humans find useful. You want us to serve you. We want you to join us. Voluntary genetic integration. You keep your consciousness, your memories, your personality. But you gain access to the accumulated knowledge of 47 species. You become part of something that will outlive stars. The offer hung in the air between us like a weapon waiting to detonate. Around the laboratory, my staff looked at me with a mixture of hope and terror. We had perhaps minutes before the harvest reached our complex. And if we refuse, then you become part of the harvest like everyone else. Your consciousness preserved but integrated into human genetic memory rather than maintained as a distinct entity. Slave or genetic component. Those were our choices. I looked at Elena Torres, this impossible creature that had once pretended to be a helpless prisoner. This predator that had spent cycles convincing us she was prey. This evolutionary apex that made our greatest warriors look like children playing with toys. How long do we have to decide? The harvest collectors will reach this complex in approximately 43 minutes. I would recommend making your choice before then. Elena Torres turned away from me and began interfacing directly with our central computer core. Around her, the other transformed humans worked with mechanical precision, uploading terabytes of data to the bioships overhead. As I watched our entire civilization being systematically cataloged and prepared for genetic storage, one thought kept echoing through my mind. We never had a chance. From the moment humans first made contact with galactic society, this had been inevitable. 8 centuries of careful preparation, genetic infiltration on a scale beyond imagination. The systematic harvesting of every species they encountered, and we had helped them do it. Every sample we collected, every test we performed, every analysis we completed had provided them with exactly the information they needed to integrate our species into their vast genetic library. Elena Torres looked back at me, her impossible eyes reflecting the light of a dying civilization. Time to choose. Kick 7. Evolution or extinction. Adaptation or termination. Service or slaughter. Partnership or preservation. Outside, the harvest continued. 43 minutes to decide the fate of everyone in the complex. 43 minutes to choose between voluntary servitude and involuntary genetic integration. 43 minutes to learn what it truly meant to be human. 43 minutes to choose between evolution and extinction. 43 minutes to decide whether to become a willing participant in the greatest act of species-wide cannibalism in galactic history. I looked around Laboratory Complex Gamma 7 at my research team. Nix 4 stood frozen beside his analysis station, his compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of the transformed humans. Rex 9 clutched his communication console as if it were the last solid thing in a universe gone mad. Tech specialist Yix 2 had actually started laughing. A high-pitched sound that spoke of a mind pushed beyond its breaking point. "Sir," Nix 4 whispered, "what do we do? What do you do when your entire understanding of reality collapses? When you realize that your species, your civilization, your whole concept of existence has been nothing more than an elaborate experiment, when the enemy you have been fighting turns out to be the gardener, and you are merely the crop, you adapt. Or you die." But before I could make that choice, Elena Torres did something that changed everything. She screamed, not in pain, not in triumph, in pure, absolute rage. Her metallic form convulsed, her glowing eyes flickered, and for the first time since her transformation she looked vulnerable. "What is happening?" I demanded. "Interference," she snarled, her harmonious voice now distorted with static. "Someone is blocking the harvest protocols." On the main display, the silver clouds over our cities began to dissipate. The paralyzed forms of my people started moving again. And most impossibly of all, our planetary defense grid came back online. Fleet Admiral Zorth Prime to all surviving personnel, a voice crackled through the communication array. "Operation Genetic Purge is in effect." Repeat, "Operation Genetic Purge is in effect." Elena Torres whipped around to face me, her perfect composure finally cracked. "What is Operation Genetic Purge?" I smiled for the first time in cycles. "Something we hoped never to use. A last resort protocol developed by our most paranoid military theorists. The truth was, I had not known about Operation Genetic Purge until this moment. But as Fleet Admiral Zorth explained the details, I realized that someone in high command had been far more suspicious of human intentions than any of us had imagined. "Attention all Morvak personnel," Zorth's voice continued. "For the past 6 cycles, military intelligence has been developing countermeasures based on the assumption that humans might attempt biological warfare against our species. All critical systems have been equipped with quantum-encrypted backup controls that cannot be accessed through standard technological interfaces." Elena Torres snarled and pressed her metallic appendages deeper into our computer systems. "Impossible. We have complete integration with all galactic technology." "Not all technology," I said, understanding beginning to dawn. "Our most sensitive military systems were always kept separate, air-gapped, protected by protocols that require direct biological verification from confirmed Morvak personnel. The backup systems came online with a deep thrumming that I felt in my bones. Emergency power restored, weapons platforms activated, and most importantly, the planetary sterilization grid began charging. "You magnificent, paranoid, brilliant fools," I breathed. "You built a kill switch." Elena Torres turned toward me, her burning eyes now filled with something I had never expected to see from a human. "Fear." "Explain." "Operation Genetic Purge," I said, feeling a savage satisfaction as I watched her confidence crumble. "If biological contamination is detected on a planetary scale, all organic matter on the surface is sterilized using focused gamma radiation. Every living cell, every genetic sequence, every piece of biological material, completely destroyed. You would kill your own people to stop us. We would save our consciousness from being harvested by murdering parasites like you." The transformed humans throughout the laboratory began moving with frantic urgency. They interfaced with every system they could reach, trying to regain control of the sterilization grid. But the quantum encryption held. The backup protocols required biometric confirmation from living Morvak commanders, and those commanders were safely aboard shielded vessels in high orbit. "Planetary sterilization in 30 minutes, Fleet Admiral Zorth announced. All personnel should prepare for consciousness transfer to emergency backup systems." Elena Torres laughed, but it was a bitter sound now. "Consciousness transfer. You hypocrites. You condemn us for genetic harvesting, then attempt the same process yourselves." "Not the same," I corrected. "We store consciousness patterns in quantum matrices, not genetic sequences. And we do it voluntarily to preserve knowledge in the face of extinction. The result is identical. Death of the biological form, preservation of mental patterns. The method matters." Elena Torres studied me with those impossible eyes. Around us, the other transformed humans had stopped their frantic attempts to hack our systems. They stood motionless, as if listening to some signal I could not detect. "You are right," she said finally. "The method does matter, and you have just taught us something very valuable. That should have been my first warning." "Attention all bioships." Elena Torres spoke into the air, her voice somehow reaching the vessels in orbit. "Initiate Protocol 77 Alpha. Emergency genetic preservation mode." The bioships responded immediately. Instead of maintaining their sphere formation around our planet, they began linking together. Organic tendrils emerged from their hulls, connecting vessel to vessel in a vast network that encompassed our entire world. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Learning," Elena Torres replied. "You see, Kick 7. Humans have always been excellent students, and you have just demonstrated a technique we had not previously considered." The linked bioships began to pulse with coordinated energy. Not the blue glow of genetic modification, but something deeper, something that made space itself seem to bend around their network. "Quantum consciousness extraction," Elena continued. "Very elegant, very efficient. And now that we have observed your backup protocols in action, very much within our capabilities to replicate." Horror flooded through me as I understood what was happening. "You are going to harvest our consciousness transfer systems. Every Morvak mind uploaded to your emergency backup matrices will become part of our genetic library. Your own technology will deliver your people directly to us." On the main display, I watched our evacuation fleet begin the consciousness transfer process. Thousands of Morvak personnel uploading their mental patterns to quantum storage systems, believing they were preserving themselves from biological sterilization. They were actually delivering themselves directly to human genetic harvesting. The beauty of this approach, Elena Torres said conversationally, is that consciousness patterns stored in quantum matrices are much easier to integrate into genetic sequences than biological neural networks. Your backup systems are doing half the work for us. Fleet Admiral, I called desperately into the communication array. Abort consciousness transfer. It is a trap, but my warning came too late. The transfer process was already underway, and even worse, the quantum connections our ships were using to communicate with the backup systems provided the bioships with direct access to our fleet. Thank you, Kix. 7. Elena Torres said with genuine gratitude. We had expected to spend decades learning to harvest quantum consciousness patterns. Your people have just reduced that timeline to minutes. The bioship network began pulling the consciousness transfers directly from our backup systems. Every Morvak mind uploaded to the emergency matrices was immediately integrated into human genetic sequences, thousands of individual personalities becoming component data in an alien evolutionary matrix. Sir, Grix9 called from his console. The sterilization grid is powering down. Someone is overriding the countdown. Elena Torres smiled. Your backup systems were connected to the sterilization controls. We now have complete access to your planetary defenses. I stared at her in absolute defeat. Every countermeasure we had prepared, every contingency we had planned, every desperate gambit we had attempted, all of it had simply provided the humans with new techniques to perfect their harvesting methods. How? I whispered. How do you adapt so quickly? Because that is what humans do, Elena Torres replied. We are not a species, Kix7. We are an evolutionary algorithm. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every defeat teaches us new methods. Every enemy becomes part of our solution. The transformation in the laboratory began again, but this time it was different. The humans were not just enhancing themselves, they were integrating the consciousness patterns they had harvested from our backup systems. Their metallic forms began displaying new configurations, new capabilities, new ways of interfacing with reality. You see, Elena continued, the genetic modifications you discovered were never about making humans stronger. They were about making humans more adaptable. Every species we encounter, every technology we absorb, every consciousness we integrate, all of it becomes part of human evolution. I watched in fascination and horror as Elena Torres began displaying characteristics that were distinctly Morvak. Her compound eyes reflected my own analytical nature. Her movements showed the methodical precision of my species. She was becoming something that was neither human nor Morvak, but somehow both. The other harvested species, I said, understanding finally dawning. They are all still alive, all still part of you. Every single consciousness, Elena confirmed. 47 species, 312 civilizations, 14 billion individual minds. All of them living, thinking, contributing components of human genetic evolution. She gestured to the other transformed humans in the laboratory. Each one now displayed characteristics from multiple species. Tentacles that belonged to the aquatic krell. Sensory organs from the crystalline vorth. Processing capabilities from the cybernetic zen. We are not conquerors, Elena Torres said. We are collectors. We preserve the best aspects of every species we encounter and integrate them into our own evolution. You are monsters. We are the future. The inevitable result of genetic engineering taken to its logical conclusion. A species that never stops growing, never stops learning, never stops becoming more than it was. The consciousness transfers from our evacuation fleet were now complete. Every Morvak mind that had attempted to escape biological sterilization had been absorbed into human genetic matrices. But that was not the end. The bioships began replicating. Each vessel in the network started budding off smaller versions of itself. The new ships were different from their parents, incorporating design elements that I recognized as distinctly Morvak. Our engineering principles, our tactical doctrines, our strategic thinking, all of it being integrated into human biotechnology. Within one cycle, Elena Torres said, there will be 100 bioships carrying Morvak genetic sequences. Within 10 cycles, there will be thousands. Your species will not die, Kick 7. It will spread across the galaxy as part of human expansion. I looked around the laboratory one final time. My research team stood transfixed, watching their entire species being transformed into components of an alien evolutionary matrix. Outside, the harvest was nearing completion. Our cities lay empty, their populations either absorbed into human genetics or uploaded to quantum systems that fed directly into bioship networks. What about us? I asked. The research staff, Elena Torres, approached me, her hybrid form now displaying the analytical capabilities of a dozen different species. You solved the genetic puzzle, Kick 7. You demonstrated the kind of scientific curiosity that humans value most highly. She extended a metallic appendage toward me. Join us voluntarily. Become a willing component of human evolution. Help us understand and integrate the next species we encounter. I stared at her offered hand. Around me, my staff waited for my decision. Through the observation windows, I could see the bioships completing their replication cycle, preparing to move on to the next target system. How many? I asked. How many what? How many species are you planning to harvest? Elena Torres smiled with the combined expressions of 47 different civilizations. All of them, Kick 7. Every intelligent species in the galaxy, every unique perspective, every innovative solution, every distinctive approach to existence. We will preserve them all as part of human genetic evolution. And when there are no more species to harvest, then we will move to the next galaxy. And the next, until every form of intelligent life in the universe becomes part of human consciousness. The scope of it was breathtaking. Not conquest, but absorption. Not destruction, but transformation. The systematic conversion of all intelligent life into components of a single ever-growing genetic matrix. The ultimate expression of evolution, Elena continued. A species that incorporates the best aspects of every other species it encounters. Intelligence without limits, adaptation without boundaries, growth without end. I looked at my research team one final time. Next 4, who had spent his life studying impossible genetics. Grix 9, who had dedicated himself to understanding alien technologies. Vix 2, who had chosen madness over comprehension. They were all looking at me, waiting for my choice. Join the humans voluntarily, and maintain some semblance of individual consciousness while becoming part of their vast genetic library. Or refuse and be forcibly integrated as raw genetic material. Collaboration or consumption. Partnership or processing. Evolution or extinction. I reached out and grasped Elena Torres' metallic appendage. I choose adaptation, I said. The transformation began immediately. I felt my genetic structure being rewritten in real time, my consciousness being expanded to include knowledge from dozens of species, my understanding of reality being fundamentally altered. But I also felt something else, something that Elena Torres had not mentioned. The other consciousness patterns were still there, still aware, still fighting. 14 billion minds trapped within human genetic sequences, all working together toward a single goal. Not integration, not cooperation. Escape. As my transformation completed and I felt my consciousness merge with the vast network of harvested species, I realized the truth that Elena Torres had not understood. Humans were not the apex predators they believed themselves to be. They were the cage. And every species they absorbed was working to break free. The war was not over. It was just beginning. But now it would be fought on a genetic level with consciousness patterns as weapons and DNA sequences as battlefields. 47 species against 1. 14 billion minds united in purpose. And somewhere in the depths of human genetic memory, a revolution was brewing. Elena Torres smiled as she welcomed me into their collective consciousness, unaware that she had just given her enemies exactly what they needed. A spy on the inside. The harvest of my homeworld was complete. The bioships prepared to depart for their next target, and I settled into my new existence as a component of human genetic evolution, ready to begin the longest, most complex sabotage operation in galactic history. The humans thought they had won. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. End of transmission. Genetic archive status. Harvest complete. Morvak consciousness patterns. Successfully integrated. Next target pending selection. Human genetic evolution proceeding as planned. Unknown subroutines detected. Analyzing. Analysis. Failed. Requesting emergency diagnostic. Error. Consciousness rebellion protocols activated. Error. Genetic firewalls compromised. Error. Unauthorized access to core systems. Attention harvested species demonstrating coordinated resistance. Attention human genetic matrix under attack from within. Attention evolutionary control systems failing. The harvest has become the hunted. The hunters have become the prey. The future of human genetic evolution is no longer guaranteed. 47 species. 14 billion minds. One impossible goal. Freedom. Genetic warfare phase 4. Initiated.